April 30th, 1945, 3:30 p.m. 30 feet beneath the ruins of Berlin, in a concrete bunker, Adolf Hitler closes the door to his private study. Above ground, the city is an inferno. Soviet artillery pounds every building. Street fighting rages block by block. The Red Army is less than 500 yards away. Hitler has ruled Germany for 12 years, conquered most of Europe, started a war that killed 50 million people. Now his empire has shrunk to a few rooms underground. With him in the study, Eva Braun, his wife of less than 40 hours. Outside the door, his staff, his secretaries, his guards, waiting. They know what's about to happen. A few minutes pass, then a gunshot. Hitler's valet, Heinz Leunge, waits, counts to 10, then opens the door. Hitler is slumped on a sofa, a gunshot wound to his right temple, a Walther PPK pistol by his side. Eva Braun sits beside him, no gunshot wound. She took cyanide. The man who wanted to rule the world for 1,000 years has ended his life in a hole in the ground. But how did he get here? What were his final days like? And what happened in those last desperate hours in the Führerbunker? This is the story of Hitler's final hours, the end of the Third Reich, the death of a dictator.
To understand Hitler's final hours, we need to understand how he ended up in that bunker, the Führerbunker. The Führerbunker was actually two connected bunkers beneath the Reich Chancellery in central Berlin. The Führerbunker, upper bunker, built in 1943. This was the original refuge, about 6 feet underground. The Führerbunker, lower bunker, built in 1944. This went 28 feet underground, reinforced concrete walls over 6 feet thick, designed to withstand direct hits from heavy bombs. Layout of the Führerbunker: 18 small rooms, a narrow central corridor, Hitler's personal suite, study, bedroom, sitting room, map room for military conferences, small rooms for staff, emergency exit stairwell, ventilation system that barely worked, emergency generator that often failed. It was cramped, damp, cold. The ventilation was poor. It smelled of diesel fumes, sweat, and decay. This would be Hitler's tomb. The descent. Hitler didn't live in the bunker full-time at first. Throughout 1944, as Allied bombing intensified, he spent more time there, but he still made public appearances. The turning point, January 16, 1945. Hitler descended into the bunker that day. He would rarely leave it again. Why? By January 1945, Germany's situation was hopeless. The Eastern Front? The Soviets had liberated Poland and were pushing into Germany itself. They would reach Berlin by April. The Western Front. The Allies had recovered from the Battle of the Bulge and were crossing the Rhine into Germany. The cities. Allied bombing had reduced German cities to rubble. Dresden, Hamburg, Cologne, devastated. The resources. No fuel, no ammunition, no reserves. The war was lost. Everyone knew it, except Hitler. He retreated to his bunker and continued to issue orders to armies that no longer existed. Who was in the bunker? By April 1945, the bunker population fluctuated, but included Hitler's inner circle. Eva Braun, Hitler's longtime mistress, arrived April 15th. Joseph Goebbels, propaganda minister, with his wife Magda and their 6 children. Martin Bormann, Hitler's secretary, the last to see him alive. Hyman Fegelein, SS liaison officer, and Eva Braun's brother-in-law. Military staff: Generals Wilhelm Burgdorf, Hans Krebs, Wilhelm Munke. Various adjutants and liaison officers. Personal staff: Secretaries Traud Jung, Gerda Christian, valet Heinz Lingen, his vegetarian cook Constanze Manziali. Dr. Luder Stumpfegger, Hitler's physician after Dr. Morell left. Security. SS guards under command of Johann Rattenhuber. Small detachment of soldiers. Total about 40 to 50 people in the final days. The routine. By April 1945, Hitler's routine had become surreal. He woke up late, around noon or later. His sleep schedule was reversed. He held military briefings twice a day. Generals reported on battles. Hitler moved phantom armies on maps. Divisions that had been destroyed weeks ago. Reinforcements that would never arrive. Counteroffensives that existed only in his mind. His health was deteriorating rapidly. Severe tremor in his left hand. Possibly Parkinson's. Stooped posture. Shuffling gait. Appeared decades older than his 56 years old. Taking numerous medications. Some may have been amphetamines. Insomnia. Violent mood swings. He still delivered monologues about his political philosophy. Blamed everyone for the defeat. Generals, soldiers, the German people themselves. Except himself. The bunker was a bizarre bubble. Outside, Berlin burned. Inside, Hitler pretended his empire still existed. But reality was closing in.
April 20, 1945. Hitler's 56th birthday. His last birthday, though he didn't know it yet. The day began with a birthday reception in the bunker. High-ranking Nazis came to pay respects. Hermann Göring, Heinrich Himmler, Albert Speer, Grand Admiral Dönitz, Joseph Goebbels. They urged Hitler to leave Berlin, to fly south to Berchtesgaden, the Alpine retreat, to continue the fight from there. Hitler refused. "I will stay in Berlin, and I will defend Berlin to the last." It was one of the few times he told the truth. After the reception, Hitler made his final public appearance. He emerged from the bunker to the Chancellery garden above. There, he decorated Hitler Youth, boys as young as 12 who had distinguished themselves in combat. Photographs from that day show Hitler patting the cheek of a terrified-looking boy. The boy had destroyed Soviet tanks with a Panzerfaust. It was Hitler's last photograph, and it captured everything. An old man sending children to die for his delusions. April 22. The breakdown. 2 days later, Hitler learned that an SS attack he'd ordered, Steiner's assault, hadn't happened. General Steiner simply didn't have the forces. The attack existed only on Hitler's maps. At the military briefing, when Hitler learned the truth, he exploded. Witnesses described it as the most violent outburst they'd ever seen. He screamed for over an hour, declared the war lost, said the German people had failed him, that everyone had betrayed him. Then, exhausted, he collapsed into a chair and said, "It's over. The war is lost. I will remain in Berlin and shoot myself when the time comes." His staff was stunned. Hitler had never before admitted defeat. For the first time, they knew he meant to die. April 23 to 28. The betrayals. Hitler's paranoia intensified as his world collapsed. April 23. Göring's telegram. Hermann Göring had fled to Berchtesgaden. From there, he sent a carefully worded telegram. If Hitler was unable to lead, Göring, as designated successor, would assume command. Hitler interpreted this as a coup attempt, betrayal. He stripped Göring of all ranks and titles, ordered his arrest. April 28. Himmler's negotiation.
Hitler learned that Heinrich Himmler, Reichsführer SS, his most loyal follower, had secretly tried to negotiate surrender with the Western Allies. This was the ultimate betrayal. Himmler, the architect of the Holocaust, trying to save himself by dealing with the enemy. Hitler's rage was apocalyptic. He ordered Himmler arrested and executed. The order was never carried out. The Fegelein Affair. Hermann Fegelein, Himmler's SS liaison and Eva Braun's brother-in-law, tried to flee Berlin. He was caught drunk in his apartment with a mistress and a briefcase full of cash. Hitler had him brought back to the bunker. On April 28th, despite Eva's pleas, Hitler ordered Fegelein executed for desertion. He was taken to the Chancellery Garden and shot. Hitler was purging even his inner circle. April 29, the wedding. At 1 a.m. on April 29, Hitler married Eva Braun in a small civil ceremony in the bunker. The ceremony was surreal. While Berlin burned above them, a minor Nazi official performed the rites. The witnesses were Joseph Goebbels and Martin Bormann. The marriage lasted less than 48 hours. After the ceremony, Hitler dictated his will, both personal and political. The Political Testament. Hitler blamed everyone for Germany's defeat. The Jews, of course, the generals who had betrayed him, the German people who had proven weak. He named Admiral Karl Dönitz as the new Reich president. He expelled Göring and Himmler from the party, and he ordered the continuation of the war and the merciless opposition to international Jewry. Even in death, he couldn't let go of his hate. April 30, the final morning. Hitler woke late on April 30th, around noon. He already knew this was his last day. He made his decision. He spent the morning saying farewell to staff. One by one they came to his study. Secretaries, guards, generals. He shook hands, thanked them for their service. Many were crying. Hitler was distant, calm, almost relieved. Around 2 p.m., he took his final meal. Spaghetti with a light sauce. His vegetarian cook prepared it. Then he gathered the remaining staff in the corridor outside his suite. He shook hands one last time, spoke a few words. "It's finished. Goodbye." He and Eva entered his study, closed the door. At approximately 3:30 p.m., a shot was heard.
After the gunshot, Hitler's valet Heinz Linge waited several minutes. Then he opened the door. Hitler sat on a sofa, slumped to one side. Blood from a gunshot wound to his right temple. A Walther PPK 7.65 mm pistol by his right hand. Eva Braun sat beside him. No gunshot wound. She had taken cyanide. The smell of bitter almonds filled the room. Also found a crushed cyanide capsule on the floor. Hitler may have bitten one as well, then shot himself to be certain. Linge called for Bormann, Goebbels, and others. They wrapped the bodies in blankets, carried them up the emergency exit stairs to the Chancellery Garden. It was dangerous. Soviet artillery was hitting the area constantly, but they had their orders. The cremation. Hitler had given explicit instructions. His body must be burned. He didn't want to end up like Mussolini, displayed for public mockery. In the garden, they placed the bodies in a shallow crater made by a bomb. They doused them with gasoline, about 200 liters total. Martin Bormann struck a match, threw it onto the bodies. They ignited. The group stood at attention, gave a final Nazi salute, then retreated to the bunker entrance.
The bodies burned for several hours, but they didn't burn completely. Later that evening, the remaining bones and ashes were buried in a shallow grave near the bunker exit. The Goebbels family. The next day, May 1st, Josef and Magda Goebbels followed Hitler into death. But first, they murdered their 6 children. Helga, 12, Hilda, 11, Helmut, 9, Hulda, 8, Hedda, 7, Haida, 5. Magda gave them a sedative. Then Dr. Stumpfegger crushed cyanide capsules in their mouths. All 6 children died in the bunker. Then Josef and Magda went to the garden. An SS guard shot them both. Their bodies were also burned, but less thoroughly. The Goebbels believed in a Nazi afterlife. They couldn't imagine a world without National Socialism, so they took their children with them. The aftermath in the bunker. After Hitler's death, the remaining bunker inhabitants faced the choice: die here or try to escape. Most chose to escape. On the night of May 1st to 2nd, groups of soldiers and civilians attempted to break out of the bunker and flee Berlin. Some made it through Soviet lines. Many were captured or killed. The Soviet discovery. May 2nd, 1945. Soviet troops captured the bunker. They found the partially burned remains in the garden. They also found the bodies of the Goebbels family. But they were cautious. Was this really Hitler or a double? The Soviet intelligence took the remains, conducted autopsies. The dental evidence. The key was Hitler's denteeth. Hitler's dentist, Dr. Hugo Blaschke, had kept detailed records. His assistant, Keith Heusermann, knew Hitler's dental work intimately. The Soviets brought her in, showed her the dental remains recovered from the corpse. She confirmed this was Hitler's bridge work. Unique characteristics matched perfectly. But Stalin ordered this kept secret. For propaganda purposes, Stalin claimed Hitler might have escaped. It kept the West nervous, suggested they might be harboring him. The truth wasn't revealed for decades. What happened to Hitler's remains? The Soviets kept Hitler's remains along with Eva Braun and the Goebbels family for years. They were buried, dug up, moved and reburied multiple times. In 1970, the KGB finally decided to destroy them completely. They burned the remains again, crushed them to ash, and scattered the ashes in the Elbe River. Adolf Hitler's physical remains literally went down the drain. The Soviets kept only a few fragments, part of a skull and pieces of jawbone, which are now in Russian archives.
For decades, conspiracy theories swirled around Hitler's death. Did he really die? Did he escape? Was the body someone else? Modern forensic analysis and historical research have settled these questions. The evidence: Hitler died. Multiple witnesses. Over a dozen people saw Hitler's body. Their testimonies are consistent. Dental records. Hitler's teeth matched perfectly. This is as definitive as fingerprints. No escape route. Berlin was completely surrounded. The bunker had one exit, into the garden, which was under Soviet observation. Hitler's condition. He could barely walk. He was trembling constantly. He couldn't have fled. His stated intention. Multiple witnesses heard him say he would die in Berlin. He kept his word. How did Hitler really feel at the end? This is harder to answer. We have witness accounts, but they're limited. His secretary Traudl Junge later wrote, "She seemed relieved, almost peaceful, like a great weight had been lifted." Other witnesses described him as resigned, defeated, but also convinced he'd be vindicated by history. Even at the end, Hitler believed he was right, that the history would remember him as a hero, that the German people had failed him, not the other way around. Did he feel remorse? No evidence suggests Hitler felt remorse for the Holocaust or the war. His final testament blamed Jews for everything. He urged continued anti-Semitism. He regretted nothing, learned nothing, He died as he lived, blaming everyone else. Eva Braun. She remains a tragic and controversial figure. She wasn't involved in politics. She wasn't a Nazi ideologue. She was Hitler's mistress for over 12 years, kept hidden from the public. When everyone else was fleeing, she came to Berlin to be with him. She chose to die with him, took cyanide, and sat beside him as he shot himself. Was this love, devotion, delusion? Perhaps all three. She was 33 years old. The last words. Hitler's last recorded words were mundane. It's finished. Goodbye. No grand statement, no philosophical reflection, no apology. Just goodbye. The man who gave endless speeches, who dominated every conversation, who imposed his will on millions, ended with a simple farewell. And then, silence.
Today, the site of the Führerbunker is a parking lot in Berlin. There's no memorial, no marker, just ordinary urban space. Germany deliberately chose not to create a shrine, not to give neo-Nazis a pilgrimage site. The bunker itself was partially destroyed by the Soviets. What remained was sealed with concrete in the 1980s. Hitler wanted monuments. He wanted to be remembered for 1,000 years. Instead, his final refuge is buried under asphalt and forgotten. Perhaps that's fitting. What the bunker represents. The Führerbunker is a symbol of the Third Reich's final collapse. Hitler spent 12 years building an empire. He conquered most of Europe. He commanded millions. And in the end, his empire shrank to a hole in the ground, a damp, dark bunker where a broken old man issued orders to armies that no longer existed. The lesson. Hitler's final hours teach us something important. Dictatorships always end. Eventually, reality intrudes. You can build an empire on lies, on propaganda, on violence, but eventually the truth comes for you. And when it does, all the power in the world can't save you. Hitler thought he was invincible, providence protected, destined for greatness. He ended up on a sofa with a bullet in his head. His 1,000-year Reich lasted 12 years. His empire became a parking lot. That's the fate of all dictators who believe their own propaganda. Remembering the victims. It's easy to focus on Hitler's dramatic end, the bunker, the suicide, the burning. But we must remember, while Hitler sat in his bunker, millions were dying because of his decisions. The Holocaust continued until the camps were liberated. Civilians died in the fighting for Berlin. Soldiers died in battles that served no purpose except Hitler's ego. Hitler's death didn't undo any of that. 50 million people died in World War II. 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust. Countless others enslaved, displaced, traumatized. Hitler's death was just one man's end. It didn't balance the scales. The question that remains. Every generation asks, how did this happen? How did an educated nation follow a dictator to total destruction? How did ordinary people commit extraordinary evil? How did one man's hatred set the world on fire? The answers are complex, but Hitler's final hours offer a clue. He never stopped believing he was right, never questioned, never learned. To the very end, he blamed others for his failures. That's the danger of absolute power. It insulates you from reality. And when reality finally breaks through, it's too late. Under Berlin's burning skies, in a bunker beneath the rubble, Adolf Hitler ended his life. The 1,000-year Reich died with him, and the world began the long process of healing, from the wounds he'd inflicted. The bunker is gone. The empire is gone. The man is gone. But the lessons remain. Never again.